Ladies and gentlemen, 1. Seeking validation instead of self-respect. A man who looks to a woman for his worth is like a ship without a captain, adrift and lost. True confidence comes from within, not from her approval. 2. Trying to control what is not his to control. Attempting to change a woman, her thoughts, or her actions is as foolish as commanding the winds. A wise man focuses only on what he can govern, his own mind and actions. 3. Reacting emotionally instead of acting rationally. To be a slave to emotion is to abandon reason. A moment of unchecked anger, jealousy, or neediness can undo years of dignity. Master yourself and you master every situation. 4. Neglecting his purpose for the sake of love. A man's purpose is his guiding star. If he abandons it for love, he will soon find himself lost and unworthy of the respect he once commanded. 5. Tolerating disrespect. A wise man does not beg for respect, he commands it by his presence and actions. He walks away from those who do not honor his time, energy, or dignity. 6. Becoming overly attached. To the unstable attachment to that which is fleeting breeds suffering. Love with strength, not desperation. If she chooses to leave, let her for you remain whole regardless. A man who seeks to control that which is beyond his power sets himself up for endless frustration and disappointment. Nowhere is this truth more evident than in his dealings with women. The illusion of control is seductive. It whispers that if he says the right words, acts the right way, or applies enough effort, he can mold another person's thoughts, feelings, and actions to his will. But this is folly. A man may influence, but he cannot dictate the course of another's heart. The wise man understands this, and in doing so liberates himself from the unnecessary burden of trying to command what was never his to command. At the core of this mistake is a misunderstanding of where a man's true power lies. A fool believes his power extends outward, that he can shape the actions of another through persuasion, coercion, or even force. He believes that with enough effort, he can make a woman love him, respect him, or change her nature to suit his desires. But this belief is rooted in insecurity, in a fear of uncertainty, and in an unwillingness to accept that people are independent beings with their own will. A man who clings to this illusion finds himself in a constant battle, trying to bend reality to fit his expectations, and in doing so, he suffers needlessly. A woman's mind and emotions are as shifting as the tide, subject to her past experiences, her desires, her personal struggles, and the ever-changing nature of life itself. To expect her to conform to a fixed idea of what a man wants her to be is to fight a losing battle. She may choose to stay, to love, to care, but these are choices she must make freely. The moment a man tries to force a particular outcome, he erodes the very foundation of what makes a connection meaningful. Love and respect that are demanded or manipulated are neither love nor respect at all. They are obligations born from fear, guilt, or dependency, and they never last. This need for control often manifests in subtle ways. A man may think he is acting out of love when he constantly questions her whereabouts, monitors choices, or tries to influence who she spends her time with. He justifies his actions under the guise of concern or care, but in reality, he is driven by insecurity. He fears losing her, fears that she may find something or someone better, fears that if he does not assert his presence, she may forget his value. But true value is not proven through control. It is demonstrated through self-assurance. A man who is confident in his own worth does not need to grip tightly to another in desperation. He knows that if she chooses to stay, it is because she wants to, not because she is bound by force or manipulation. Another way this need for control manifests is through the desire to change a woman's nature. Some men believe that if they guide, correct, or criticize enough, they can mold a woman into their ideal partner. They may try to suppress parts of her personality, dictate how she should behave, or shape her into an image that better fits their expectations. But this is a futile pursuit. People change only when they choose to, not when they are forced. A woman who alters herself under pressure does so temporarily, but resentment builds beneath the surface, and in time that suppressed self will re-emerge, often with more force than before. A wise man does not seek to change others. He accepts them as they are and makes his own decisions accordingly. If a woman's nature does not align with his principles, he does not attempt to reshape her. He simply chooses not to engage in a relationship that is misaligned from the start. The strongest relationships are not built on control but on mutual respect and freedom. A man who understands this operates with a quiet strength. He does not seek to possess or manipulate. He stands firm in his values, allows others to be who they are, and chooses wisely who he allows into his life. He does not fear loss because he knows that what is truly his will stay by choice, not by force. This is not weakness but strength, the ability to let go of the illusion of control and embrace the only power that truly belongs to him, mastery over himself. A man who seeks validation from others, especially from women, surrenders his power without realizing it. He allows his worth to be dictated by external opinions, reactions, and fleeting emotions rather than by an unshakable inner foundation. This is a dangerous path, for the moment he depends on someone else's approval to feel confident, he becomes a servant to their perception of him. A man who is ruled by the need for validation loses control over himself. His thoughts, actions, and decisions no longer stem from his own values, but are shaped by the desire to be liked, admired, or accepted. This mindset creates a cycle of dependence, where his sense of self fluctuates based on how others treat him. If a woman praises him, he feels strong. If she ignores him, he feels weak. If she stays, he believes he is enough. If she leaves, he questions his entire worth. A man who operates this way is like a leaf in the wind, constantly shifting direction based on forces outside of his control. He forgets that strength comes not from external validation, but from an internal foundation built on self-respect. Seeking validation from women often leads a man to compromise himself. He may suppress his true opinions, change his behavior, or tolerate disrespect simply to maintain her approval. He fears that standing firm in his beliefs might make him lose her, so he bends, hoping that compliance will earn him love. But in doing so, he loses the very thing that makes a man valuable: his integrity. No woman truly respects a man who cannot stand for himself. She may tolerate him, use him, or even admire his willingness to please in the short term, but she will not see him as strong. And without strength, a man is easily discarded. There is a fundamental difference between being valued for who one is and being temporarily appreciated for playing a role. A man who constantly seeks validation is always performing, adjusting himself to what he believes others want. He smiles when he doesn't feel like it, agrees when he disagrees, and conforms to expectations even when they go against his nature. This weakens him, making him feel like he must always maintain and act to be worthy of affection. The fear of rejection or disapproval keeps him trapped in this exhausting cycle, preventing him from ever knowing true confidence. The irony is that the more a man seeks validation, the less valuable he becomes. Confidence cannot be faked indefinitely. People sense when a man is desperate for approval, and this desperation repels rather than attracts. A man who respects himself does not beg for acceptance, he simply exists as he is, unbothered by whether others approve. His indifference to external validation is what makes him truly compelling. He does not seek to be liked at the cost of his authenticity, and because of that, he naturally earns respect. True self-respect is built through discipline, self-awareness, and an unwavering commitment to one's principles. A man must learn to validate himself by holding himself to his own standards, rather than looking to others for reassurance. He must take pride in his actions, in his ability to remain steadfast under pressure, and in his ability to walk away from situations that diminish his worth. When a man prioritizes self-respect over validation, he no longer fears rejection or disapproval. He understands that external opinions are temporary and unreliable, while his own sense of worth, once solidified, is permanent. The strongest men do not seek to be accepted, they seek to be true to themselves. If others respect them for it, that is merely a consequence, not the goal. The moment a man stops chasing validation and starts living by his own standards, he frees himself. He no longer needs constant reassurance because he knows his own value, and that knowledge is unshakable. A man who allows his emotions to dictate his actions is like a ship caught in a storm without a captain, tossed in every direction, powerless against the forces around him. To react emotionally rather than act rationally is to surrender control, not only over oneself but over the outcome of every situation. Emotion is fleeting, unpredictable, and often unreliable. It clouds judgment as persists to decisions that may provide temporary satisfaction, but long-term regret. A man who wishes to be strong must master his emotions, not be mastered by them. When a man reacts emotionally, he becomes impulsive. He speaks without thinking, acts without considering consequences, and allows his feelings to override logic. This often leads to actions driven by anger, jealousy, insecurity, or fear. In relationships, such reactions can manifest in many ways: snapping in frustration, becoming possessive out of jealousy, or making grand gestures in desperation to keep someone close. Each of these is a sign of weakness, a demonstration that he is not in control of himself. A man who reacts emotionally places his peace in the hands of others, allowing their words and actions to dictate his state. One of the greatest dangers of emotional reactions is how easily they can be manipulated. A man who is controlled by his emotions is predictable, and predictability is vulnerability. If a woman knows that jealousy will provoke him, she can use it to control his actions. If she knows that he will react with anger to certain words, she can push him into making mistakes. If others recognize that his mood depends on their approval, they can string him along with false praise or calculated rejection. A man who is ruled by emotions is easily led by those who know how to trigger them. True power lies in composure, the ability to remain steady and unshaken regardless of what happens around him. Strength is not found in loud outbursts, aggressive behavior, or desperate attempts to regain control of a situation. These are signs of a man who has already lost control. True strength is found in restraint, in the ability to pause, assess, and respond with clarity. When a man chooses logic over emotion, he makes decisions that benefit him in the long run rather than those that merely satisfy his feelings in the moment. He understands that his emotions are real but not always truthful, that they are reactions to circumstances rather than reflections of reality. To act rationally instead of reacting emotionally does not mean suppressing emotions. It means acknowledging them, understanding their source, and choosing to respond in a way that aligns with one's principles rather than one's impulses. It requires self-awareness, the ability to recognize when emotions are taking over, and the discipline to step back before making a decision. A man who does this maintains control over his life, regardless of how others behave. He is not swayed by insults, not provoked by petty games, and not thrown off course by temporary feelings. A rational man understands that his emotional response to a situation is not the same as the reality of the situation. A woman pulling away does not mean he is unworthy. A moment of conflict does not mean a relationship is over. A setback does not mean failure. Those who react emotionally see only the immediate pain, while those who act rationally see the bigger picture. This ability to separate feeling from fact is what allows a man to move through life with confidence, making decisions that serve his long-term well-being rather than those that merely ease his temporary discomfort. A man who masters his emotions is not cold or detached, he is disciplined. He does not allow anger to control his words, fear to dictate his choices, or insecurity to determine his actions. He approaches every situation with a clear mind, knowing that his response, not his reaction, will define him. In doing so, he commands respect, earns trust, and, most importantly, maintains control over his own destiny. A man's purpose is the foundation of his strength, the compass that gives his life direction, and the fire that fuels his growth. It is what gives him meaning beyond fleeting emotions and temporary attachments. Yet many men make the mistake of abandoning this purpose when they fall in love, believing that devotion to a woman should take precedence over their own path. This is one of the greatest errors a man can make. When a man neglects his purpose for the sake of love, he does not only lose himself, he also loses the very qualities that made him attractive and respectable in the first place. Love, in its most intoxicating form, can make a man feel as though nothing else matters. In the early stages of romance, he may be tempted to prioritize his partner above all else, giving her his undivided time, energy, and attention. He may cancel plans, neglect his ambitions, and slowly reshape his life to revolve around her. But in doing so, he weakens himself. A man who once stood firm in his principles, driven by goals and a clear vision, becomes soft, dependent, and easily swayed. He shifts from being a leader of his own life to a follower in hers. No woman truly respects a man who loses himself in love. While she may enjoy the attention at first, she will eventually sense the lack of strength, the absence of purpose, and the erosion of the qualities that once drew her in. She may not consciously recognize it, but over time her admiration fades. A man without direction is like a ship without a destination, drifting aimlessly, hoping the winds will carry him somewhere worthwhile. But a man who abandons his path in the name of love is not only lost, he is also unworthy of the respect he once commanded.
A man's purpose should never be conditional upon the presence or absence of a woman. Whether in a relationship or alone, his mission must remain unchanged. A woman may walk alongside him, but she should never become the destination. If a man gives up his ambitions to accommodate a relationship, he builds his life around something unstable. No matter how deeply two people love each other, relationships are subject to change. A woman's feelings can shift, circumstances can evolve, and nothing is guaranteed. If a man's sense of identity is tied solely to the relationship, what happens when it ends? He is left with nothing, realizing too late that he sacrificed his own growth for something impermanent. Strength comes from balance. A man must love with presence but live with purpose. His goals, his dreams, and his personal evolution must always come first, not out of selfishness, but because they define who he is. Relationships should complement his path, not replace it. The strongest relationships are built not on dependency, but on mutual respect, where each person maintains their individuality and continues growing. When a man remains committed to his purpose, he offers his partner something far more valuable than blind devotion. He offers stability, leadership, and an unwavering sense of self. A man's purpose is his anchor. It is the one thing that remains when all else fades. No matter how deep his love for a woman, he must never forget this truth. Love can enhance his journey, but it should never become his entire world. A man who neglects his purpose for the sake of love does not gain more love, he only loses himself. And in losing himself, he loses everything. A man who tolerates disrespect invites it into his life. When he allows others to treat him poorly, whether through words, actions, or a lack of regard for his time and value, he sends a clear message. He does not respect himself enough to demand better. And if a man does not respect himself, no one else will either. Respect is not something that is given freely, it is earned, reinforced, and protected. The moment a man accepts disrespect, he weakens his own position, setting a precedent that such treatment is permissible. Disrespect can take many forms. Sometimes it is direct insults, dismissiveness, or open contempt. Other times it is subtle, habitual lateness, ignoring boundaries, or making a man feel small through passive-aggressive behavior. In relationships, it can appear as emotional manipulation, public embarrassment, or a lack of appreciation. Regardless of how it manifests, the result is the same, a slow erosion of a man's dignity. A man who tolerates these things tells the world that he values peace over self-respect, that he would rather endure mistreatment than assert himself. But peace without respect is not peace at all, it is submission. A man may justify tolerating disrespect by convincing himself that it is not worth the confrontation. He may fear conflict, worry about losing someone, or believe that standing up for himself will make him seem difficult. But in doing so, he chooses weakness over strength. A man who avoids confrontation for the sake of maintaining a relationship will eventually realize that the relationship itself is built on false terms. He is not valued for who he is, but for what he allows. A person who disrespects him once and faces no consequences will do it again, pushing further each time until there is nothing left of the man's self-worth. Respect is not demanded through words alone. It is enforced through action. A man who commands respect does not need to beg for it or threaten others into compliance. He simply does not engage with those who treat him poorly. He sets firm boundaries, and if they are crossed, he does not tolerate it. He removes himself from the situation. This does not mean acting out of anger or revenge. It means having the self-discipline to walk away from people and environments that do not align with his standards. The strongest men are not those who fight every battle, but those who refuse to be drawn into battles that diminish them. A man who respects himself does not entertain drama, does not chase those who devalue him, and does not allow his emotions to override his principles. He knows that his time and energy are limited, and he will not waste them on those who refuse to treat him with the dignity he deserves. Women, in particular, test a man's self-respect. Whether consciously or unconsciously, they push boundaries to see how firm they are. A woman does not truly respect a man she can walk over. If he allows her to belittle him, talk down to him, or make him feel small without consequence, she will lose admiration for him. She may stay, but not out of genuine love or respect, rather out of convenience or the absence of a better option. No man should accept this. A woman may be beautiful, intelligent, or deeply loved, but none of these qualities excuse disrespect. Tolerating disrespect is a slow poison. It does not break a man all at once, but piece by piece, it chips away at his self-worth until he no longer recognizes himself. The only way to prevent this is to be unwavering in one's standards. A man who respects himself will not plead for respect from others. He will simply refuse to engage with those who cannot provide it. He does not need to explain, argue, or seek validation. His actions speak for themselves. And in the end, the world treats him exactly as he has taught it to. A man who becomes overly attached to the unstable sets himself up for suffering. Whether it is a volatile relationship, an unpredictable person, or an uncertain situation, attachment to instability is like building a house on shifting sand. It offers no foundation, no security, and no peace, only the constant fear that at any moment, everything could collapse. A man who ties his emotions, sense of self, or future to something unstable is not in control of his own life. He becomes a passenger, helplessly reacting to the chaos around him rather than steering his own course. Attachment itself is not the issue. A man can love deeply, invest in people, and care about what he builds. But when he clings to something that is inconsistent, unreliable, or harmful, he invites unnecessary pain into his life. He convinces himself that if he just tries harder, gives more, or endures longer, he can create stability where there is none. This is an illusion. Stability is not forced, it is either present or it is not. A woman who is unpredictable, emotionally volatile, or unwilling to commit will not change simply because a man wants her to. A situation that is inherently unstable cannot be made secure by sheer effort alone. A man who becomes overly attached to instability often does so because of fear of being alone, fear of losing what he has invested, or fear that he will not find something better. He convinces himself that the instability is temporary, that with enough patience, things will settle. He holds on to the good moments, using them to justify enduring the bad ones, but instability does not fix itself. More often than not, it worsens. The longer a man remains attached to something that disrupts his peace, the more he sacrifices his own well-being. The cost of attachment to instability is high. It drains a man's energy, fills his mind with anxiety, and prevents him from focusing on what truly matters: his purpose, his growth, and his peace. A man who is constantly trying to stabilize something outside of his control neglects the stability within himself. He is always waiting for someone to be more consistent, waiting for a situation to improve, waiting for chaos to subside. In doing so, he places his life on hold. He postpones his goals, sacrifices his standards, and settles for less than he deserves. A woman, no matter how beautiful or captivating, is not worth sacrificing a man's peace. If she is unpredictable, plays emotional games, or keeps him in a cycle of highs and lows, she is not a partner, she is a distraction. True companionship is not built on emotional turmoil, but on trust, consistency, and mutual respect. A man who allows himself to be drawn into an unstable relationship will spend more time trying to fix it than actually living. He will lose himself in the process, becoming reactive rather than proactive, weak rather than strong. The strongest men recognize instability for what it is and refuse to attach themselves to it. They do not waste time trying to control the uncontrollable. They do not make excuses for erratic behavior or invest in what does not invest in them. Instead, they walk away from what disrupts their peace and focus on what builds their life. Stability is not found in chasing the unstable, it is found in mastering oneself. A man who understands this does not fear letting go. He knows that true strength is not in holding on to chaos, but in choosing calm over turmoil, certainty over unpredictability, and self-respect over desperation. A man's strength is not measured by how much he can endure, but by what he refuses to tolerate. He does not seek validation at the cost of his self-respect, nor does he sacrifice his purpose for fleeting affection. He does not react impulsively or allow his emotions to dictate his actions. Instead, he remains grounded, firm in his values, and unwavering in his discipline. True power lies in the ability to walk away from what diminishes him: disrespect, instability, and anything that threatens his peace. A man who understands this does not beg for approval, cling to what is unreliable, or compromise his standards for the sake of temporary comfort. He stands tall, not because others recognize his worth, but because he himself does. In the end, a man who respects himself commands respect from the world. He is not ruled by emotion, nor does he allow the unpredictable to control him. He builds his life on a foundation of purpose, self-discipline, and inner strength, and because of that, he moves through life with clarity, confidence, and a quiet, unshakable power that no one can take from him.